My husband and I like to walk along the river walk here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I love gazing into the Black Warrior River and look at the ebb and flow in the movement of the water. As we look at that water, I think about the calming effect of it and the transformational effect of it. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, a young black boy was growing up in the rural South, and he too liked to stand on the riverbank and look across on the other side. For him, the side he was standing on was very brutal and oppressive because he was living in the historical era of the Jim Crow era. And so for him, life was not very easy. In fact, he told stories. He would tell stories of those who were supposed to protect him really brutalizing him. And often they would round up boys, pick them up, and subject them for no apparent reason, just pick them up and subject them to life of hard labor in the penal system. This young boy always thought about this unrest in his life because he thought about looking over on the other riverbank, on the other side, and wishing that there was something better for him. Even though this was a time of unrest, things were beginning to change in the South. Blacks were beginning to find their collective voices and protest against this system of Jim Crow, this system of traditions, of laws that were unjust. And as they began to organize and integrate public places like schools and restaurants and other public places, they came against resistance, which was often. But I want to go back to that boy, the picture of that young boy, black boy. That young black boy grew up in Selma, Alabama, and that was my father. So I think about him on that riverbank, and I think about a bridge. We know a bridge as a solution to a problem, and really you can't really cross the river easily without a bridge. It's really hard to get from one side of the riverbank to the other without a bridge. So I think of a bridge as really a vehicle of transformation and positive change. If you think about being on one side of the bridge, you're really at one point that might be bleak and not hopeful, and think about going to the other side where there's hope and freedom. So I think of that bridge as really a powerful symbol of transformation and positive change. Many of you recognize this bridge, and this is the bridge of my father's hometown of Selma, Alabama, and it's the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This bridge, of course, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, that event which on one side of the bridge, the marchers really came against violence and brutality. But if you think about it, when they crossed that bridge, 54 miles in 4 days from Selma to Montgomery, it meant freedom, and it meant the eventual passage of the Voting Rights Act. So we think about it, on one side of the bridge, masses of black people were voteless. And then when they crossed that bridge, they had the power of the vote. And I think about that even in my own work in healthcare, as a healthcare provider. If we think about a bridge and we think about it as a solution to problems, we would want to think about maybe on an individual level, diseases like HIV/AIDS and cancer and cardiovascular disease on one side of the bridge. And then on the other, we would think about managing those diseases or even preventing them, or even health and wellness. Also, we would even think a little broader from not just the individual level of thinking about disease, because that's really a traditional way to think about health care. And when we think about health care, we have to think about the ultimate goal of saving lives. So I would even think about not just on the individual level, but on the population level, where on one side you have different groups that have disproportionate health, like Latinos and African Americans. And then on the other side, you would eliminate those disparities. But I also want to think even deeper than that, because there was a recent article in the American Journal of Public Health in 2011 where they estimated the causes of death in the U.S. And surprisingly, the number one cause was not something we think about like in our traditional healthcare hat of traditional diseases. If you see number one is low education. So how is that? How do we broaden our definition of saving lives? Well, we know low education is really, there's a relationship between low education and low health outcomes. And it's even more complicated than that. There are probably different mediators that complicate that picture. We think maybe economic mediators or health behaviors. I know Dr. Blum's going to be talking about smoking as a way to really think about decreasing health outcomes. And also psychological mediators. For example, we know that there's some studies that show that people who have low income might have less coping skills or less problem-solving skills, or they might have more stress in their life, so that could affect the relationship between low education and health outcomes. So I want to take a little time to really just kind of talk about this idea of building new bridges to save lives, building new bridges to save lives in healthcare. And I really want to use three principles and look at it from the context of Selma, Alabama, with its rich, unique history and also the life of my father. So the first principle I want to talk about is to empower. To empower. So my father graduated from Hudson High School in Selma, Alabama in 1952. He went on to go to college that same year. So when he was standing on the banks of the Alabama River, he never even imagined that he would, let alone graduate from high school or go on to college. It seemed like such an impossibility because he grew up, his parents were laborers, and they barely graduated from elementary school, so they never even made it to high school. So the question is, how is it that a poor black boy from Selma, Alabama was able to graduate from high school and then go on to college? Well, the answer is simple. 3 words: Father Nelson Zida. So Father Nelson Zida was a priest who was assigned to Selma in 1947. He was a part of the Edmondite missions of the Catholic Church. And when he got there, his ministry was very clear: to really transform the lives of black youth in Selma. So in 1947, he founded the organization, the Don Bosco's Club. And the Don Bosco's Club really was a club to use recreational activities to really encourage the youth to higher education. And I think his ministry was very successful because over the 18 years of the ministry, 700 boys and girls, later girls, went through the ministry, and he was able to send 150 young black boys to colleges all throughout the Southeast. My father was a recipient of one of the scholarships because, of course, although he emotionally supported them, he also had to support them financially. So my father received a scholarship to Xavier University in 1952 and then graduated in 1956. And I think that without Father Zida really empowering him for that higher education, he would not have been able to look across that river to better opportunities. I also think that it was the empowerment of a caring priest really to really save the lives, I think, of many young boys and girls in that community during that time. The next principle I'd like to talk about is the principle of advocate, to advocate. And I also want to go back to Father Zida because Father Zida advocated for the young black boys in that community. My father told me stories of the police sometimes rounding them up, I talked about this before, and taking them to jail. And then when they would get to the jail, the sheriff would say, "Isn't that one of Father's boys?" And the policeman would say, "Oh yeah, that's one of Father's boys. That's one of those nigger-loving that's one of the boys of the nigger-loving priest. And so the sheriff would say, well, we might as well just let them go, because by the time he gets up here, he'll have bail for him, and it'll just be a waste of time. So in a lot of ways, Father Zaida was really a safe haven for them and an advocate to really save their life and really keep them out of a system that could have engulfed them and taken them out. So I believe that he was a strong advocate in that way. In recent history, we think about HIV/AIDS. In the early 1980s, HIV/AIDS was really affecting and devastating the lives of white gay men in many of our large cities in this country. And one advocate who founded that organization, he said, no more. I'm gonna found this organization called ACT UP. And what ACT UP did was really just loudly demonstrate and really advocate for the lives of those living with HIV/AIDS. And during that time, the drugs would take, a new drug would take about 10 years to be tested and then come to market. And within that time period, they said, that's too long. We need a shorter time. Too many people are gonna die within 10 years. We need a drug now. We need HIV/AIDS drugs now. So really, they demonstrated in government official offices and stopped traffic to get the attention they needed, and eventually were able to fast-track drugs much longer, fast-track them much shorter than in 10 years. And for that, I think they saved thousands and thousands of lives. So this is a powerful example of the use of advocacy to really save lives. And here's another slide there. So the third principle to really build bridges to save new lives is the principle to mobilize, And so I think about, if we think about the history of Bloody Sunday, this is a picture of Amelia Boynton Robinson. And if you look at that picture, there's a lot of pain and agony. She's talked in lectures about being tear gassed, and really that affecting her throat and her hearing, even now in her hundreds. And so I look at this picture and it evokes a lot of anger and a lot of emotion in me. And I think when these pictures went out after Bloody Sunday occurred, it did for the nation and for the world. I went to a very powerful lecture one time on the role of photographers in the civil rights movement. And they talked about, the photographer was talking about taking a picture, and as the protesters were being attacked, he stepped in to try to prevent one of the protesters from being attacked, and Dr. King said, "Butt out. We need these pictures to get out." I think Dr. King really understood the power of the media and these pictures and really mobilizing the masses with the civil rights movement. If you remember, in the second and third march, really after the Bloody Sunday march, Dr. King put a call out to people to come and join him and join them in the second and third marches to march from Selma to Montgomery. And thousands came. Thousands came. Whites came, blacks came, Jews, Gentiles came, Northerners came, Southerners came. So it really helped to mobilize and really push the movement forward. I think in this day and age, 2015, we have powerful mediums. Remember in 1965, the people that took those pictures were professionals. But now, anybody can pull out their phone and take a picture and a video, and we're seeing this over and over again. And really, they can take those pictures and put them on different platforms like Instagram and Facebook, and really mobilize and change the world. And we're seeing this with many, many campaigns, in particular current day campaigns. The 1% campaign, which really looks at the young people really protesting the poverty and the wealth gaps. And most recently, the Black Lives Matter campaign, which has really, really been powerful. So those pictures, the technology has really helped us to really take that anger and angst that we have to really then organize, first mobilize and then organize for a special cause. So I think as we begin, and these three principles again are empower, to advocate, to mobilize, If we think about these three things, principles, I want us to go back to that Edmund Pettus Bridge, that picture of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, because I would talk about building a new bridge parallel to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and then others would argue that there's a big controversy now on whether or not we should change the name of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So that would make it sort of new if we change the name. If you know the history of Edmund Wilson Pettus, he was a general, Confederate general. He was also a Alabama state senator, and also a leader in the Ku Klux Klan. So some say that that does not kind of jive with the civil rights movement. But either way, we're talking about building a new bridge. We're talking about doing it in a new way. I would even talk about if we change the name, think about a new civil rights bridge, which really dealt with saving lives in healthcare. For example, the NAACP has dubbed HIV/AIDS in African Americans as a new civil rights issue. They put it in that language because they really want to frame it in a really social imperative kind of way, which really makes it an emergency for us to really kind of pay attention to. I think we need to begin to think about that when we're talking about saving lives, really broadening our definitions of health, not just from diseases and illness, but think about societal factors, which also play roles, and also think about health disparities and social injustices and social inequalities. I would also want to try to get some more people to join me in this struggle. I would love to be the leader of the struggle, and I would love to have new foot soldiers. You know, in the civil rights movement, we call the people that protested and marched the foot soldiers. I would love to have new foot soldiers, those healthcare students, health professional students, because I think it's going to be the younger generation, not my generation or the older one, that are going to lead this march across a new bridge. I think, for example, there are 18,000 medical students that graduate in the United States each year. I think if I could take a tenth of them, 1,800 a year, that would be a great number to go across that new bridge of healthcare and saving lives. I think about those students. We'd have to train them with different skills, of course. They'd have to have broader skills around population health and societal factors of treating health. But I would just love to lead them in a song, in a chant across that bridge, because you know the chants and the songs really energized the protesters when they went across that bridge. So I would have to pick up my sign, build new bridges, and I would start with my chant. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Join me. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you.